Well, CNN has a new mission. It wants to censor, block Newsmax from broadcasting as a cable news channel. On Sunday's Reliable Sources, CNN guest Alex Stamos had this to say.
We have to turn down the capability of these conservative influencers to reach these huge audiences. There are people on YouTube, for example, that have a larger audience than daytime CNN, and they are extremely radical and pushing extremely radical views. And so it's up to the Facebooks and YouTubes in particular to think about whether or not they want to be effectively cable networks for disinformation. And then we're going to have to figure out the OANN and Newsmax problem. You know, that these companies have freedom of speech, but I'm not sure we need Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, and such to be bringing them into tens of millions of homes.
Well, our panel joins us now to weigh in, talking about this Newsmax problem, so-called. We have Dino Scaros, a presidential historian and immigration attorney, also professor and author of the book Trumped Up Charges. Also joining us is Rick Gates, a former Trump campaign aide and author of the new book here on your screen, Wicked Game. And finally, we welcome in Brian Trasher, a Republican strategist. Good to see everyone here. Brian, while we're still on the airwaves, despite CNN's call to kick us off, what's your message to those guests and hosts who want us canceled?
Well, when people talk about the Newsmax problem, I always assume they were talking about me, but I guess it was a larger issue here. Look, for those of us who are students of history, our eyes and ears are burning as we watch what's going on in America right now. Prior to 1933, the German state was called the Weimar Republic, and it was governed by the Weimar Constitution, which afforded its citizens freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, many of the things we see in our First Amendment here in the United States. When the Nazis seized control power in 1933, the first thing they did was suspended the Weimar Constitution under the guise of an emergency because their Third Reich headquarters had been burned down. Does that sound familiar? And so we're seeing history repeat itself. As I said on the air last week, all you have to do is replace the word Jews with the word Republicans, and there's virtually no way to distinguish between the Nazi rhetoric of the 1930s and the far left of the Democrat Party in 2021.
Rick Gates, I'll go to you for this. I would go farther than calling it cancel culture. This is censorship. Make no mistake about it. What are your thoughts on that? Because we cannot forget that the FCC, by the way, does have a hand in what would happen, and what kind of effect would that have?
Yeah, look, we're in a very dangerous position. We've gone from, when they were attacking President Trump 4 years ago as a liberal media to cancel culture, now to all the way to censorship. And it's a very unfortunate position that we're in. And look, as conservatives, we have to fight. And if we don't, things like the Democrats are doing, this rhetoric that they're, talking about out there, it's so incredibly dangerous. I mean, you take CNN, they've become the most anti-American network, in our country, because if you don't think like them, if you don't talk like them, then they're going to do everything they can to crush you. So the way that they're going to do this is through the power apparatus, exactly as you outlined, the FCC, Democratic-controlled Congress. They're going to, go after the Democratic businesses that control the servers and the computers and the networks. All of this leads to a situation where, slowly democracy will die if we don't do something about it. And so the call has been made, and the Republicans and conservatives have to step up to counter this. We can't let these types of things, continue.
Well, CNN media reporter Oliver Darcy sort of doubled down, advancing the remarks by tweeting this, saying, just a reminder that neither AT&T, Verizon, or Comcast have answered any questions about why they beam channels like OAN and Newsmax into millions of homes. Do they have any second thoughts about distributing these channels given their election denialism content? They won't say. End quote. We at Newsmax have acknowledged that Joe Biden is president-elect once the Electoral College certified those results. Dino, I'll go to you, though. It reminds me sort of the Trump administration and all throughout it, this whole idea of the Russian collusion hoax that was broadcast nearly every day on CNN's airwaves. And yet Newsmax had never called for them to be canceled.
Make no mistake. Today's left are not liberals. They are not the liberals of the 1960s and 1970s that promoted free speech. And I don't say this often, but thank goodness for the ACLU, who is on the side of free speech and against the censorship. Joseph Stalin was not a liberal. Fidel Castro was not a liberal. Nikita Khrushchev was not a liberal. These are not liberals. These are absolutely radical censors. And you're just hearing on the news now that a caravan from Guatemala was planning on coming up to the United States. And I'm thinking, where are these people even thinking they're coming to? Because this is fast not becoming a free country anymore. It's really shameful and it's dangerous. And Ronald Reagan said he had faith in the American people. Fortunately, I do too. And I think enough good Americans are going to say enough at some point. And I think they're starting to wake up. The more radical information here coming out of CNN and other branches of the media and of the government, sadly.
Let me just say really quick
Yeah.
before you wrap up, if you don't like what you're seeing on television, guess what? Turn the channel. We'll leave it there.
Exactly. Good point, Sean. All right, Rick, Brian, Dino, stick around because our conversation on censorship continues right after this. John Fetterman making a questionable remark on Friday by claiming that, quote, the lies about the 2020 presidential election are not constitutionally protected. Watch.
This idea that saying that Pennsylvania was rigged or that we were trying to steal the election, unquote, that's a lie. And that you do not have the right, that is not protected speech. He can talk all day about what his favorite football team is or that he's the greatest president in the history of the world. But no one, Republican, Democrat, whatever, has the right to say those kind of incendiary lies.
Our panelists are back. Dino Scaros, Rick Gates, Brian Trasher. Thanks for coming back on here. Dino, I'll start with you on this. What are your thoughts from what you've just heard there? And mind you, when you do answer, remember that allegations against irregularities with elections, this is not anything new.
Exactly. Exactly. I've been teaching about this for over 20 years. And I remember ever since Bush versus Gore, I was saying, look, there's so many problems, you're never really going to know who won. And so this is absolutely nothing new. The lieutenant governor is 100% wrong. There is absolutely nothing wrong with questioning elections. And a lot of Americans have not concluded one way or the other whether the election was stolen, whether it was not, and what irregularities there were. I hope there will be a bipartisan commission to investigate it. But it is insane to censor the idea of questioning the validity of an election.
And yet, Rick Gates, we know that if you try to post those remarks on social media, they could be censored as misinformation. Your account could be suspended.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where we draw on the line, and it's really become difficult to be able to even question anything within our government. And what we've seen, particularly over the last 4 years, is just this rise of liberal media attacking. And the more that we as conservatives continue to allow that to happen without fighting back, it's going to be absolutely problematic for us to move forward. John Fetterman was absolutely wrong. As an elected leader, he should be the first to advocate for open and free and honest communication.
All right, I'm out of time. Brian Trasher, I do apologize, but I appreciate you joining the program today. Dino Scaros, Rick Gates, and again, Brian Trasher, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Emma.